Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop and Merry Christmas. Today we are making a gift as I'm the Secret Santa, so this is going to be fun. It's a little box to hold a knife with a couple extra things on there. Really simple, fun project. Let's dive in and take a look at this. So one of the things I do each year is we host a Secret Santa, and we had about 50 people this year sign up for it, and we did the drawing for it, and I drew someone, so I get to play Secret Santa. And today I'm going to be making a box to house this knife. I made this knife a couple years ago, I think it was, and it's from a kit from Tay Tools. One of my favorites. I absolutely love this one, but I don't use it that much because I've got others, and so I thought this would make a great gift. However, I want to actually put it in something else. So today we're going to make a little display box, and I'm trying to figure out what to make it out of. I've got some 500-year-old English oak. I've got some really nice walnut. I've got some padauk. I've got some lace wood, and we're going to have a little bit of fun and just make something off the cuff. Let's dive in. So I ended up deciding to make the box out of walnut for the sides and lacewood for the top and bottom. This is going to be a little grooved box so the lid slides on and off on the side. So let's start with the walnut. First thing we need to do is dimension it down, flatten it, and get a surface that I can then measure off of. We're going to use a marking gauge to measure in 1/4 inch. I want all of the sides to be 1/4 inch thick, at least to begin with. I'm going to make them a little bit thicker as we go. But we're going to, well, kind of resaw down out of this scrap a 1/4 inch block. And this should be big enough for all 4 sides. So we have the 2 long sides and then the 2 short sides. And then we're going to miter these to make them fit together. But just to make sure I have enough stock, because I wasn't sure of the thickness, I just decided let's do another one just to make sure. We've got it here, and if I don't use it, then I'm going to be able to pull it out of the scrap stock. And I was glad I did because I did end up using it. After ripping it all down, we then need to come back in and smooth out the other surface and plane that down. Now, there's a couple different ways of holding it in place so that it will actually plane down. One of those is taping it down to the bench, which I'll be showing that a little later. The other one is just put up a plane stop that's a little bit below the thickness of the piece and run it down. And this actually works really well. It's a good way to understand and get used to small stock control and actually having better control over the plane. And I showed making this planing stop in a recent video, so if you want to see that, hop on over there. But it's actually a really fun one, and walnut is so easy to work with. It's a very pleasing wood to actually do. Now, it's very important that both of these be precisely the same thickness because I want them to wrap around the board nicely. Now that I have them cut to the right dimension and thickness, we need to make sure that I have the right height on the box, in other words, the width of this board. So I laid out the measurement of taking the thickness of the knife, adding in the top and bottom lid, and then the extra space I need for the groove. And so then that gave me the total height of the actual box. Put a marking gauge on there, and then you plane it down until the marking gauge line disappears. So the other way I often do it is just use some double-sided tape. I just use the cheap stuff, lock it down on the bench, and this works really well. And so for a lot of times when I need to make the groove, this works really well because it needs to overhang the bench just a little bit. This is a grooving plane that I made a long time ago. It's one of the first hand tool projects I ever did. Really quick and easy, and anytime I need to make a 1/4 by 1/4 by 1/4 groove, that's when it comes out. For the bottom of the box, I'm actually going to have the bottom sit into a small rabbet rather than a groove, and that way the bottom of the box will be flush. So I'm going to get my rabbet plane and make a small 1/4 by 1/4, actually it's like a 1/4 by 1/8 rabbet along the bottom. Works out pretty well for that. Now we need to miter this so that we can wrap the corners. So we'll put it into the shooting board, which I have set up at 45 degrees, and then that allows me to trim it down to exactly 45 degrees on there. I'm going to make one small piece, and then I'm going to make one large piece, and then I'm going to use those as patterns to then make the final pieces on there. So I can cut this to close to the length I want it to be, then trim it down, and then lay that out on the other board, and then cut that off close to the length it needs to be, and then I can put it in the shooting board and trim it right back to the exact length and make sure that it matches up precisely with the other piece. So we're going to end up with 2 long pieces and 2 short pieces for this long rectangular box. On one of the small pieces, I'm actually going to cut off the groove that I have. That way I can attach that to the lid, and slide it in and out. So we can set the walnut aside for a moment and start working on the top and bottom. I'm going to use this piece of lace wood, and I kind of like this when they all get oiled. It has a very, very similar color to walnut, but it has a texture to it which really comes out. And part of me was thinking I should have made the whole box out of this, but I like that little bit of detail of having the sides smooth and clean walnut, and then the top and bottom have that little bit of detail from the lace wood. So I can use those pieces I have to measure out precisely the right size boxes here, because I want it to fit into that little rabbit that I cut out for the bottom. I can cut them close to the size and then take them to the shooting board and make them exact. Then I can set them on here, put the pieces in place, and say, no, I need to shoot off just a little bit more. And I sneak up on it, just a couple shavings at a time until it gets right down on it. Now, pre-glue up, we're going to do a quick test here. I want to make sure that everything fits. I want to make sure that everything is going together and nice and tight. So a little bit of rubber band holds it in place because we're going to be using some epoxy. It doesn't require clamping force like wood glue would. Normally in a case like this, I'd probably actually use hide glue, but the time I had for this build was too short, and the hide glue was going to take a little bit longer than I needed. And so in this case, the epoxy, I just used a 5-minute epoxy. And for something small like this, 5-minute epoxy is great. Put a couple rubber bands on there, wiggle it down into place, and then I ended up putting a couple squeeze clamps at strategic points until it all wiggled down on there and is right there happy. And you can see how the bottom is then sitting in. Right now the bottom is ever so slightly recessed. That's okay. We're going to come back in and plane the whole bottom nice and flush. So we're going to set that aside once it's all clamped in place, and the clamps really aren't putting much pressure on there. They're just adding a little bit of constraint so that the pieces don't move around. With epoxy, you don't need an amount of pressure. You just need to get the glue to, squeeze out. You don't want any seams. So there's the basic of the box. Now we're going to start doing some of the detailing by smoothing out the bottom, bringing it out nice and flush. And with the walnut and the lace wood, I'm going to be using some oil on there. So I am going to be finishing them with 400 grit sandpaper that will clog the pores, and that will actually allow the oil to draw in a little farther. For the top, we need to plane this down to the appropriate size, and I want to make it a little bit smaller than it needs to be, so there's some wiggle room on there, so that board can wiggle around inside the groove. I also need to make it a little bit thinner because the board was exactly a 1/4 inch and the groove is exactly a 1/4 inch, and I needed to be able to slide in there easier. So we need to take a little bit off until it fits in there. Then we have that little piece that I cut off earlier. We're going to need to attach that to the end. But before I do that, I want to make sure I get everything on this piece finished because I'm not going to be able to do the inside of it later on. Again, a little bit of epoxy on that, and then we can take that little piece we cut off earlier and clamp that on, just with a bit of a squeeze clamp, and put it in there. And of course, a project for me wouldn't be done until it has some carving in it. And I just went online, found a pattern that I liked, then sized and printed it in Microsoft Paint. Actually a really quick, simple project for getting something exactly the right size when it prints out. So then we can adhere it to the surface. I just use a simple glue stick. I really like how it holds it in place. There are a bunch of different methods and different people like different things. But I'm just going to come at this with a V-tool, and the whole thing took me like 20 minutes to do both sides. A really quick, simple carving that adds a lot of detail. And most people can pick this skill up in 5 or 6 minutes. Then afterwards, you can come back in with a card scraper and scrape it off, and we can start getting on to the next dot. And I really like how it's just a nice little detail that is very, very pleasing. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to put a little ledge inside so that the tip of the knife is held in. So if I flip the box upside down, the handle comes out first and not the tip of the knife. And so it's just a small little piece it's just a tiny little piece that's going to get held in there with a little bit of super glue. There's no pressure on this at all. It's just a small ledge that will hold the knife blade down. I want to make sure it fits and squeezes down in there. It's not too big, not too small. This one's actually too small. So we're going to go back again, cut another one, try that one out, and hey, this one actually fits because I actually cut the wrong side of the two off, and that was the one that was too small. And yeah, I made a mistake. Oh well. So we're going to file it down, smooth it out, and need to make it fit exactly. So the file takes off a tiny bit at a time to make sure it will slide down in there and held in, actually like a friction fit at this point. So the knife tucks in there with the blade underneath it, so when you take the lid off, flip it upside down. The handle comes out first, not the knife blade, so it doesn't stab you. Then I'm going to put in just a little bit of a thin epoxy super glue, hit it with an activator, and let that work. I'm going to then start the chamfering. We're going to chamfer all of the outside edges, just add that little bit of detail that cleans it up. And then once the super glue sets in place, I'm going to come in with a chisel bevel down inside and clean off all the extra schmoo that built up on there. And then I might actually I didn't in this case. I thought about cutting a small scraper so I could get in there and clean it out a little bit better. But the chisel actually worked very well for that. Also, don't forget to chamfer the lid so that it slides in and then matches up. And just like that, ooh, look, we have a box. Isn't that nice? I really like this little simple design. It's just a way to really make it just a little more pleasing. And if you're ever making a Christmas gift and you're looking for something to spice it up a little bit, a small box or something to hold it can be a huge benefit to something like that. So now we need to finish it. And of course, this being wood by Wright, that means boiled linseed oil and paste wax. Really quick, simple finish. I just like the way it really brings out, especially the walnut. It just makes the whole thing come to life. It pops out the grain on that lace wood underneath. And it's a very, very pleasing finish. It's not a very protective finish, but it gives you that really nice little shine that you want with a little bit of paste wax and a little bit of time rubbing it in, polishing that out. I really, really like how this one came out. This is a great little addition to a gift. So the gift is actually the knife, but the box is a way to dress it up. And I hope that my Secret Santa recipient also enjoys this because it's a fun little one. It's not about the end product, it's about the journey and how to get there. This is kind of a nice little design that actually will protect it so that when you flip it over to pull the knife out, it doesn't come out tip first in your hand, it comes out to handle first, making it a little bit easier to grab. So there you have it. I wanted a box to fit the knife in here, but I didn't want it so when you tip the box out, the knife would come out and stab you. So in this case, if you let it down, the handle comes out first before the blade comes out, so it makes it a little bit safer in case you drop the whole thing on your hand. I mean, what crazy idiot would do that? But I hope you like this. It was a fun one, a really simple little box. I have lots of boxes over the years, and every one is a little bit different, has different functionalities, and I like it. A box is a way you can kind of express yourself. There is no right or wrong way to do it, and there are hundreds of different methods and designs and shapes and styles, and you can do box every day for the rest of your life and never make the same one twice. They are a lot of fun. So I would encourage you to go out in the shop, have a little bit of fun. It's a great way to make a gift for someone, or if you have a gift, make them something special to store it in. This is a fun one that most people can do in an afternoon or an evening or a weekend, depending upon your skill. So I hope you like it. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, snide remarks, let me know that down below. I do read through all the comments and I answer as many as I can, so thank you for that. Commenting down below, hitting the like and sharing, those really do help out the channel and they encourage videos to get in front of other people. Thank you for that. If you'd like to take it one step farther, become a patron. All the members scrolling over here, they are patrons on Patreon. They're the ones who are quite literally keeping the lights on, as well as members on the channel, people who've clicked that little join button down below. Without patrons and members, we would not be here. So thank you. We do have special perks for both members and patrons, and you can find out more about those in the description and link down below. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, Merry Christmas. Oh, stink. This came out on the wrong day. Tomorrow's Boxing Day.